the grounds for divorce in South Carolina? There's really four main ones. The first is if you and your spouse have been living separate and apart for a period of 1 year. Now that 1 year must be from when one party moves out of the house for an uninterrupted period of 1 year. Should you reconcile within that 1 year, then the clock starts over.
The next ground for divorce is adultery. Adultery is your spouse having a sexual relationship with someone else. The key to adultery is being able to prove your case. Many clients come to me with pages and pages of phone records, or possibly pictures of their spouse out with another woman at a restaurant, and they think that's going to be enough to prove their case on adultery. Phone records and photographs themselves usually are not proof of a sexual relationship, so you're going to show that your spouse and the other person had time, place, and opportunity to actually engage in sexual relationships. This is sometimes difficult to prove, and in some matters it may be necessary to hire a private investigator to help you prove your case. If you can get a divorce on the grounds of adultery, you could in South Carolina get a divorce in as short as 90 days. But just because you can get a divorce in this length of time, your case, based on what else you have to do on the matter, may still take much longer.
The third ground for divorce is physical cruelty. Physical cruelty has to be a substantial amount of physical abuse from one spouse to another. Believe it or not, in South Carolina, your spouse slapping you across the face one time is not enough for a divorce on physical cruelty. It must be a very significant injury, or you must be able to show a pattern of constant physical abuse.
The final ground for divorce is habitual use of drugs or alcohol. This does not mean that your spouse getting drunk with his buddies on Saturday night constitute that you have a right to get a divorce on these grounds. This means that your spouse's alcohol and or drug problem has been habitual, that it means constant, and that this has been the reason for the breakup of the marriage. Again, this is a difficult ground to prove. I very oftentimes tell my clients that unless their spouse has had a recent criminal arrest for drugs or alcohol, or unless they've just gotten out of rehab, that may be difficult to prove this ground. The reason is typically a he said versus she said type thing, because most people who live with an alcoholic spouse keep it to themselves and don't allow third parties, neighbors, or friends to see the spouse. Again, if you can get a divorce on this grounds, it could be as short as 90 days.
If you and your spouse separate and you don't have one of these legal grounds, then you would file for basically what people call a separation. In the law is known as an order of separate maintenance and support. And it simply means that the two of you have a right to live separate and apart from each other.
If you have questions about divorce or any other legal situation, please call the Law Office of Brian Katonak at 803-644-5535.